Hello, everyone. This is Daniel Fosco. I'm the Senior Product Designer on the Release Group. And this video is an overview of all the categories that we have in the Release Group and some examples and links to the UX of our features and what they look like. This is meant as a sort of onboarding guide for anyone that wants to get acquainted with all of the stuff that we work on here in the release. And it's an overall list of links and useful resources if you want to understand our group. The bulk of this video is based on this issue, Release Group UX overview that lists all of our categories. By the time that you watch this video, it might be that the link has changed to a handbook page, but the content will be the same. You can also see a Figma board that has all of the screenshots for this issue, and other useful links are our planning page on the handbook, our group direction page, and the deployment direction, which I'll talk about in a bit. So starting from the very top, the release stage is meant to put all the code that our customers developed into the hands of their customers, right? So after they have configured CI pipelines, infrastructure, everything, putting all of that code as a result of their development work into the hands of their customers, deploying to their infrastructure, be it in the cloud, in something like AWS, GCP, or anything else, or in their own infrastructure that they connect GitLab to. As I said, the handbook page has a lot of information about the release team itself, the release group. You can see here, there are team members and a bunch of other useful information. There's also a planning page, as I mentioned, that breaks down a bit more in detail how we develop our software and how we release our own software. So that's another good read. But most of all, the deployment direction is a very interesting page that defines how we want to approach the topic of deployments and how we want to improve key capabilities in deployments in the near future. So this is really good stuff. And if you want to understand where we're going, this one is a page you should definitely read. All right, so going into the categories themselves, in this issue or in this page, you find each of the categories with a link to the direction page for it. And for each screenshot that shows a product, you have a title. These usually will have links, and these links take directly to the page on an example project in GitLab, where you can see the same screenshot you're seeing live. For some of them, you may need to sign in, so we might have a docs link or something like that. But starting from release orchestration then. Release orchestration is super interesting because it is a very large category that a lot of work has happened in. So it is essentially the ability to coordinate complex releases across projects in a way that is either automated or automated and also with manual steps, right? So it's essentially all of the coordination work that goes into releasing the software and getting the tools to help customers do that. So you can see here there's some stuff about manual processes versus automation and a lot of either research, competitive analysis, or vision for the future on what we want our release orchestration tools to look like. So really interesting stuff. But in practice, how does it look like, right? So this is what this video is for. So this is the releases page for the GitLab project. It's very complete, so it's a useful example, and you can see here. It has source code as assets. It has a bunch of change logs. These are all things customers can set up for their releases. And all the way down here, you can see the top commit of this release and the Git tag and some additional information. Beyond seeing the release, you can obviously create a release. There's also a UI for that, where you choose a tag, one of the existing tags, or create a new one, and then you add all of the information that you just saw on the screen below. You can create from here or from the API as well, which is also a possibility. Another way to create a release is to create a release from tag, right? So what that means is you create a new Git tag And while you're creating the tag, you add some release notes on the release notes field. And when you do that, you will automatically create an associated release to your tag. So that's a shorthand way to create a release in GitLab. Moving on to the next category, we have release evidence, which is very connected to release orchestration, but it's a more specific thing in the sense that release evidence is about creating evidence that can be used on compliance audits, right? So you can see here in the category direction, release evidence is about addressing demands of the business to understand what is changing, right? So what is changing from the point of controls and compliance to making sure that all the changes are compliant and meet the demands of the business in a way that can be auditable. So in this example here, we have this project Git doc that has release evidence set up, and you see it creates this JSON file and also links to a SHA identifier that pretty much lists everything that has been changed from this release. And if you go back here in the documentation, there's a snippet that shows what this looks like, right? So this is what the release evidence object looks like. So it lists not only the orders, the issues involved, the milestones, but also the commits themselves and the artifacts. So it's really this complete package of everything that has changed and can be tracked by the business. Next up is environment management, and this is a newer category. It was created maybe a couple months ago, and it was basically cut away from release orchestration. So you see a lot of the pages and features that environment management takes care of used to be in release orchestration. So there might be some overlap, but the ultimate goal of environment management is to enable organizations to operate and manage many environments in complex setups through GitLab. So for example, in jobs to be done, when managing my deployment platform, I want to monitor and have historical context about the different deployed versions of code across my application. So what can that mean, right? That can mean having a deployments page that clearly shows you, an environments page that clearly shows you all the different types of environments where you can drill down into, okay, for development, what has been deployed here, let me see more details, let me see this specific deployment, let me revert this specific deployment. So these are things that we are working on in environment management. And as you can see, this is the current environments page with a list of environment folders. Within them, the environments themselves. If you click show all, you will go into a page for the environment folder itself that lists all of the environments in that folder. That can be many. You see here there's even pagination. And if you jump one level down into the environment itself, then you will see list of deployments that were deployed into that environment. In this case, it's main within this folder. Those are pretty much the screenshots that we have here. So the folder and the list of deployments. And then if you go one level deeper by clicking here on the job, you could also take a look at the commit. But taking the job as an example, you see the job log for the deployment job that did this specific deployment. And you can see here, there's a piece of information that ties back to the environments page saying this job is deployed to this environment. Conversely, if it had failed, then you would see something like this, right? The deployment of this job to production environment did not succeed. If you just started a new project in GitLab, you would likely see this. If you create an environment and it doesn't have any deployment, that's what you're going to see. And then the instruction, this read more, will take you to this documentation that gives you an overview of environments and deployments and how to set them up. And then with some examples to how to create your environments and set up your deployments from your YAML file, right? So here's a simple example. Here's a more complex example with dynamic environment names, which is also something you can do. Another two interesting features that are within this category are protected environments, essentially making sure that a production environment or maybe a QA environment cannot be deployed to by certain users. So you can define which users or which user groups can deploy to this production environment and set that up. We don't have a direct link to this because it links to the settings of a project. So you need to be a maintainer of the project to get here, but there's a link to the docs that has more information. Deploy freezes are, again, within the configuration, but essentially allow you to set a window of time where deployments cannot be done, where deployment jobs cannot run for a specific environment, right? So maybe there's a specific holiday or time zone or specific time window where you don't want the team to deploy into production or anything else, you can set that up here. If I'm not mistaken, you can also do it via API, but the docs have more information on that. Next up, we have continuous delivery, and looking at the direction page, continuous delivery is all about enabling development teams to improve their velocity, right? To make sure that they can deploy more effectively and faster in a really good cadence, right? So adopting the best practices for DevOps, specifically DORA metrics, is a big thing for this category. And the features, the way they take shape is essentially dashboards, right? To show you either from the developer's perspective, or maybe even from manager or director perspective, what is the velocity and what is the efficiency in a way of the teams. So you can see here release statistics, deployment frequency, so number of deployments over time, which can be useful. And then also the lead time for merge requests, right? And that means how long it took from a merge request to be merged and until they're deployed to a production environment. So that can be seen into project analytics, CI/CD lead time. And I think it's nice to show this on the page itself. Yeah, it shows you here. There were no merge requests during this period, so no lead time. And then here you have a few. So you have data point again. Up next, advanced deployments. Advanced deployments is also super interesting because it has quite an overlap with configure, in the sense that there's a lot of Kubernetes related features as well. So deploy boards is one thing that advanced deployments implements. It is essentially an extension of the UI on the environments page that shows you the different Kubernetes pods they have set up for your environment. On this, I don't think they are running right now. We can definitely find a better example for this, but it's also nice to see like that it's here, and you see there's additional information here as well on the statuses. So essentially each one of these squares is one pod, and yeah, they can have different states based on if you have deployed to them, if they're running, if they have failed, etc. And then on top of that, another interesting feature is blue-green deploys, right? So essentially, as you have a deployment being made, you can choose between stable and canary, like what is the mix, right? That you want the new deployment to take 90% of your pods and the old deployment to take 10% of your pods. And you can change that ratio here in the UI directly, which is pretty cool. Up next, we have feature flags. I think feature flags are a very well-known feature, but essentially, yeah, you can create a flag, wrap a new feature or a new page within a feature flag, and then define a group of users that will have that flag turned on for them, and we'll be able to see that feature. Everyone else won't be. So in terms of how it looks like, this is the feature flags page. There's a bunch of them configured. And then beyond configuring a flag, right, here's the page to create a new flag. You can also create what strategies, right? What are the parameters that will define for whom this flag is enabled? So you can choose for certain environments, the feature flag will be active. You can also define a percent rollout, like a certain percentage of users will see this feature flag, and combine different kinds of strategies. And then the users, you define them in user lists, right? So you essentially create a list of users. Maybe it's your beta testers, your internal testers, maybe it's one specific customer, so you get the user IDs for everyone who's within that customer. But essentially, within your application, you get a list of user IDs, and through the integration with GitLab feature flags, GitLab can turn on the feature flags just for those users based on the user list that you have submitted. There is something missing here, a screenshot, but I will show here because this is a really cool feature. So it's essentially, you can relate feature flags to issues. So within an issue, you can add which ones are the related feature flags for that issue. And then on the feature flag, you have a link to the issue. On the issue, you have a link to the feature flag. I think I forgot the screenshot here, but I'll add it later because it's a pretty good one. And yeah, here is the full user list. If you added it, you can go in this view and then you see all the IDs for the user specifically. There's this modal for configuration as well. As I said, the user lists, they come from the application. So you need to do some configuration to connect GitLab feature flags with your application itself. So you do that through this modal. Next, we have GitLab Pages. And GitLab Pages is like a category that is moving out from the release group. It's in process, but the team still holds a lot of technical knowledge. So if you have questions, a lot of the developers and members of our team know a lot about it. But yeah, there's not a lot of UI for Pages. You just go into your project, settings, Pages, and then you either set up the domain or you set up the page itself. Again, I think there's a missing screenshot here because this is the one to add a new domain. But let's go into the example itself. To set, edit. So if we open up Pages, right, so this is what it looks like. There is already GitLab Pages set up for this project. So it's a small blog page. So the page that is being served could look like anything, but this is what the UI for GitLab Pages looks like. And if I want to set up a domain, then it's that screenshot, right, where I add the domain, which I don't have. So I don't have that set up. And then at last, this is another category that moved away from release, but still has a lot of overlap with how your code is deployed. So I thought it was interesting to the example here. But it's review apps. They run in your merge requests to create an environment for you to review the code that's in the merge request. And you can see here that's stuff being deployed. Anyway, there's a lot of connection to release still. So you can see their direction page here with more details, and then it's under the testing group, so you can see their vision here as well. This is it for this list. Let me scroll all the way to the top. And again, there's this Figma board that has all of these screenshots. Feel free to explore that if you want to. It's just a different visualization. So here we have all of them in order, yeah, of their categories. Also the deployment direction, highly recommended. And this is the first version of this video. If you think something is missing, or if there was something wrong, or if our categories change, there will most likely be new versions of this video. So feel free to leave your comments on the issue if it's there, or if it's on the handbook already, feel free to open a merge request. And thanks for watching.